The invitation was a joke. Everyone at Hargrove Preparatory School knew it. 22 sophomores standing on the west lawn for Connor Whitmore's 16th birthday party. Catered, tented, string-lit. The kind of party that cost more than most people's car payments, and the only reason Marcus Bellamy had been invited was so Connor could watch his face when he arrived. Showed up in what exactly? His mother's 10-year-old Civic? A bus? Connor had been betting on the bus. He'd told 3 people. 3 people had told 12. The whole sophomore class was waiting. But at 4:47 p.m., the sound came first. Rotors, low and deliberate, from the east. Every head turned. The catering staff looked up. Connor Whitmore squinted into the afternoon sun, hand raised to block the glare, watching a black helicopter clear the tree line and begin its descent toward the open field beyond the lawn. And Marcus Bellamy, who had not said a single word about how he was getting there, stepped off with a leather jacket and no expression, and the west lawn went so quiet you could hear the rotor wash moving through the tent. Start at the beginning. This is what they didn't know. The first day Marcus Bellamy walked through Hargrove Prep's iron front gates, he was 14 years old and wearing a jacket that was clean but not new, carrying a backpack that was organized but not branded, and looking at the grounds. 3 acres of manicured lawn, a Georgian main building with white columns, a rowing facility, an equestrian center, with the particular kind of stillness that comes not from being unimpressed, but from deciding not to show what you feel until you understand where you are. He was there on an academic scholarship, full ride, tuition fees, the laptop, the blazer with the school crest. His mother, Nadia Bellamy, had driven him the 40 minutes from their apartment in Ferndale in her 10-year-old Civic, and when she dropped him at the gate, she had straightened his collar and said simply, "You know who you are." Not be careful, not work hard, not don't let them see you sweat, just, you know who you are. He had carried that sentence like a compass. What Marcus Bellamy knew about himself at 14 was this. He was the son of a woman who had worked as a hospital administrator for 16 years and put herself through a graduate program in health systems management. At night, 1 class per semester. Over 7 years because the tuition assistance only covered part-time enrollment, and she could not afford to stop working. He was the grandson of a man named Edmund Bellamy, who had immigrated from Ghana at 23 with $80 and a mechanical engineering degree from the University of Ghana that American employers in 1971 spent 2 decades refusing to fully recognize, and who had spent those same 2 decades building a small precision machining business from a rented garage in Detroit that eventually employed 31 people and held 4 aerospace manufacturing contracts. Edmund Bellamy had sold the business at 68 to a private equity firm for a sum that his family did not discuss publicly, and that Marcus had been raised to understand was not a reason to behave differently, but was very much a reason to understand the world differently. Marcus was not broke. He had never been broke. What he was, what the scholarship represented, was his mother's refusal to touch Edmund's money for anything she could provide herself, a principle she had held since the sale and intended to hold until Marcus was 18 and old enough to understand what the money was and what it wasn't. The scholarship was Nadia's choice. The Civic was Nadia's choice. The apartment in Ferndale, when they could have lived anywhere, was Nadia's choice. These were not privations. They were a curriculum. Marcus knew this. He had always known this. He did not explain it to people who did not ask. And at Hargrove Prep, the people who could have asked did not bother. Connor Whitmore had made up his mind about Marcus within the first 2 weeks. This was a habit at Hargrove, the rapid sorting of new students by the existing hierarchy, which ran on the fuel of visible wealth. The cars parents drove to drop off, the vacation destinations mentioned casually, the equipment people brought to crew practice and riding lessons. Connor's family ran Whitmore Capital, a private equity firm with a Midtown Manhattan address and a portfolio that Connor had been briefed on annually since he was 10, the way some children were briefed on the rules of the household. His father believed in early financial literacy. His son believed in a related but distinct concept, that money was the reliable measure of a person's value, and that people who didn't have visible money were, in some fundamental sense, less serious than people who did. Marcus Bellamy wore a clean jacket that wasn't new. He took the school bus, he ate in the cafeteria without the premium meal plan upgrade. Connor had made his assessment. For 2 years, the cruelties were small and persistent, the kind that left no mark on paper. the table that somehow always had no room when Marcus approached, the group chats he was added to and then quietly removed from, the comments delivered sideways, with just enough deniability to survive a teacher's inquiry. No, sir. I just asked how he got to school. I'm interested in public transit. Marcus absorbed them with the same stillness he'd walked in with on the first day. He didn't retaliate. He did his work. He was consistently at the top of his class, a fact the hierarchy found irritating in the way that inconvenient truths are irritating, and he kept his own counsel and waited, with the patience of someone who had been raised to understand that the long view was the only view worth having. The birthday party invitation arrived by class group chat on a Tuesday. Connor sent it to 22 people and included Marcus, which was the tell Marcus had never been included in anything. The message had a dress code. It had a catering note. It had a link to Connor's birthday playlist. And it had, visible to anyone reading carefully, the energy of a setup. 2 of the 22 people texted each other immediately about it. One of them, a girl named Priya Anand, who had sat near Marcus in AP chemistry for a year and had the particular discomfort of someone who had not been unkind, but had also not been kind, sent Marcus a separate message that said only, "You don't have to come to this." Marcus read it, thought about his grandfather's garage in Detroit, the 40 years of patience, the precision machining contracts, the 31 people employed, thought about his mother's collar straightening and her 7 words. He typed back, "I know. I'm going." Here's what happened in the 6 days between the invitation and the party. Pay attention to this part. Marcus called his grandfather on Wednesday evening. Edmund Bellamy, 75 years old, living in a 4-bedroom house in Bloomfield Hills that was paid for and quiet and full of engineering journals he still read with reading glasses and a cup of tea, answered on the second ring the way he always answered, present, unhurried, already listening. Marcus told him about the party, the group chat, the history with Connor, the setup. He didn't editorialize. He laid it out the way his grandfather had taught him to lay things out. Facts first, context second, conclusion last. Edmund was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "What do you want from this situation?" Marcus said, "I want them to understand who they're dealing with." Is that the same as wanting to embarrass them? Marcus thought about it honestly. Maybe, but it's also true. They don't know who they're dealing with. One of them is worth doing. He called Marcus back Thursday morning and said he had a thought if Marcus was interested. Marcus was interested. Edmund made 2 phone calls to the fixed-based operator at Westfield Regional Airport, where he maintained a relationship from the years he'd run the machining business and needed to move engineers and contracts quickly, and to a former business associate who now operated a charter helicopter service. He did not rent the helicopter to make a point. He rented it because his grandson had been invited to a party that was designed to diminish him, and Edmund Bellamy had spent 40 years refusing to be diminished. And he intended to share that refusal with the next generation by the most efficient means available. He called Marcus back Friday and said, "It's arranged. The pilot's name is Harold. He'll pick you up at Westfield at 4:30. Dress well. Don't perform. Just arrive." Marcus bought the leather jacket on Saturday morning with his own savings. He'd been doing paid tutoring for 8 months for a family in his neighborhood. $30 an hour. 4 students. He spent 1 session's worth. He tried on 3 jackets at the consignment shop 2 blocks from the apartment, the one where the owner knew his name, and chose the simplest one. Black. Clean lines. Nothing to prove. He told his mother that evening. Nadia Bellamy sat at the kitchen table with her hands around a coffee mug and listened to her son describe the plan in full. The invitation, the setup, the helicopter, the jacket, Edmund's involvement. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "What are you trying to prove?" she said. "I'm not trying to prove anything. I'm trying to be true." Those are the same things sometimes. I know. And different things other times. I know that too. She picked up her coffee. "Your grandfather called me already. I figured." He said, and I'm quoting, "The boy has sound reasoning and I intend to support it. You can be powerful without being cruel. Your grandfather spent 40 years proving that." "I know, Mom. I know you know." She reached across the table and put her hand briefly on his. "Go be exactly who you are." 4:47 p.m. The sound arrived before anything else. The Hargrove West Lawn was in full party configuration. White tent, fairy lights strung through the oak trees, a catering team in black aprons, 22 16-year-olds in their family's version of casual, which at Hargrove meant deliberate. Connor Whitmore stood near the drinks table with two of his closest friends, Jared and Owen, in the comfortable posture of someone who has arranged the evening and is now enjoying the arrangement. He had checked the guest list twice. Marcus Bellamy had confirmed attendance via the group chat with a single word, coming. Connor had screenshot it and sent it to Jared. They'd laughed about the bus. They'd made a bet. Connor said city bus. Jared said maybe a ride share. Owen said his mom's car, and the prize was bragging rights, which was the only currency that mattered to people who had every other kind. The rotors were audible at 4:44, distant, directional, coming from the east. Some people noticed and looked up with the mild curiosity of people who occasionally saw helicopters. At 4:46, the sound became unmistakable, low, deliberate descent configuration, and the mild curiosity became something else. The catering staff stopped moving. A sophomore named Ella Chen said, "Is that landing here?" with the exact tone of a person who has seen many things and not expected this particular thing. The helicopter cleared the tree line at 4:47. A Sikorsky S-76. Black, no livery markings. The kind of aircraft that moved executives between cities, that waited on helipads at private terminals. That cost $3,000 an hour and did not generally touch down on school lawns in the suburbs, unless the people inside it had decided that was where it was going. It settled into the open field adjacent to the west lawn, with the unhurried precision of a machine operated by someone who had done this many times. The rotor wash moved through the tent. String lights swayed, napkins lifted from two tables. The catering staff had gone completely still. Connor Whitmore's hand was raised against the sun glare. His mouth was slightly open. Next to him, Jared had taken a step forward. Owen had taken a step back. The door opened. Marcus stepped down in the leather jacket, black, clean, no logos, with the unhurried ease of someone who had been told by his grandfather to arrive and by his mother to be exactly who he was, and who had, in the 6 days since the invitation, decided that this was what that looked like. He said something to the pilot, brief, audible only to the pilot, and the pilot nodded and Marcus turned and walked across the field toward the lawn. Hands in his jacket pockets, not performing, not playing to the audience, simply arriving the way he had always moved through the world, with the quiet certainty of someone who understood something that the people watching him did not yet understand about him, and had decided that today was the day they would. The West Lawn was silent. 22 people who had known Marcus Bellamy for 2 years stood in the rearrangement of everything they thought they knew and said nothing. The catering staff said nothing. The string lights swayed in the fading rotor wash. Connor Whitmore lowered his hand from his eyes. His face had passed through several expressions in the last 45 seconds. Amusement, then confusion. Then the suspended blankness of someone whose conclusion has been removed from under them, and who hasn't yet located the floor. He looked at Marcus walking across the field. He looked at the helicopter settling into idle behind him. He looked back at Marcus. He had no script for this. He had prepared extensively for a different version of this evening, and none of that preparation was applicable. Marcus reached the edge of the lawn. He looked at Connor, not with triumph, not with cruelty, with the particular clarity of someone who has paid very close attention for 2 years and understands exactly what is happening and is choosing in this moment to simply be present for it. "Happy birthday," Marcus said. Connor's mouth worked briefly. Then, "You came by helicopter." "I did." A beat. "Why?" He could have said, "Because my grandfather arranged it." He could have said, "Because you expected me on a bus." He could have said many things, some of them satisfying in the small way, none of them true in the large way. He said the thing that was most completely true, "Because I could." He walked past Connor, accepted a drink from the caterer, and found a spot near the oak trees where Priya Anand was standing apart from the group with the expression of someone who had sent a warning text 6 days ago and was now processing the distance between that text and this moment. "You actually came," she said. "You said I didn't have to." "I know. That's why I came," Marcus said. "Because I didn't have to." The party redistributed itself around this new information the way parties always redistribute around a thing that cannot be undone. Some people came to talk to Marcus, genuinely with the curiosity of people who had been operating on a false map and were now recalibrating. Some people remained in Connor's orbit and did not approach. Jared made one remark, quietly to two people near the drinks table, about how it was still just a helicopter and didn't change anything. And the two people he said it to looked at him with the flat patience of people who knew the thing he was saying wasn't true. Connor didn't speak to Marcus again that evening. He moved through his own party with the performance of someone hosting, but the animation had gone out of it. The setup had collapsed. The story he'd planned to tell on Monday was gone. What remained was a birthday party that had become, without warning, something else. A demonstration of the difference between the appearance of status and the substance of it, performed by a boy in a consignment shop jacket who had arrived in $3,000 an hour of rotors and walked away from them without looking back. The helicopter lifted off at 7:15. Harold had been waiting in the field the whole time, as arranged. On Monday, no one at Hargrove Prep spoke about Marcus the way they had spoken about him before. It wasn't that they liked him more. Some of them did eventually. It was that the old framework was gone, the comfortable certainty that they knew what he was and what he wasn't, the ease of the judgment. It had been replaced by something more uncomfortable, the recognition that they hadn't known, that they had looked at a clean jacket and a bus pass and a cafeteria lunch and concluded, with the confident laziness of people who had never been wrong about money before, that they understood what they were seeing. They hadn't, and they knew they hadn't, and that knowing cost something. Marcus Bellamy graduated from Hargrove Preparatory School 2 years later, valedictorian, in a ceremony attended by his mother, in the yellow dress she'd bought the previous spring and saved for something that deserved it, and his grandfather Edmund, who sat in the second row in a gray suit and watched his grandson speak from the podium with the expression of a man who has been waiting for something for a very long time and is now watching it arrive exactly as he knew it would. Marcus spoke for 7 minutes. He did not mention the party. He did not name anyone who had been unkind. He spoke about patience, about the difference between the patience of waiting for something to be given to you and the patience of building towards something you intend to take on your own terms. He spoke about his grandfather's rented garage in Detroit, about his mother's 1 class per semester, 7 years Tuesday and Thursday evenings after full days of work, about what it meant to understand that a long view was the only view worth having. In the second row, Edmund Bellamy pressed his lips together briefly, the same controlled expression Victor Osei had in a high school parking lot, the same expression that men of his generation wore when something they had carried quietly for a very long time was finally received. Priya Anand, sitting 3 rows back, thought about the warning text she'd sent 2 years ago and the answer she'd gotten. I know. I'm going. She thought about what it took to walk toward a setup with that kind of steadiness. She had spent 2 years trying to articulate what she'd seen in that field, in that leather jacket, in the 4 words Marcus had said to Connor by the oak trees. Because I could. That was all. Not because you thought I couldn't. Not because I wanted to prove something. Just the clean, complete truth of a person who knew who he was and had been waiting for the right moment to let the world in on it. After the ceremony, Edmund found Marcus in the crowd of graduates and their families. He put both hands on his grandson's shoulders and looked at him for a long moment. This boy who had spent 4 years at a school that did not know what it had, who had absorbed 2 years of small cruelties with the patience of someone who understood that small cruelties were small, who had arrived at a birthday party on a private helicopter and walked away from it without looking back. Your grandmother would have loved this, Edmund said. Marcus nodded. He knew. They walked out of the ceremony together, the old man and his grandson, the engineer who had built something from a rented garage and a boy who was about to begin building his own version of the same thing, into the afternoon that was waiting for them, clear and unhurried, full of everything that was still ahead. Some distances take a long time to cross. You cross them anyway, one Saturday, one semester, one landing at a time.